Hey everybody, this is Steve from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews. Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the comic store, no, it's another big week. 23 freaking comics this week. It's a huge week, kids, and I think I got everything, but with 23 books, we'll try to get through them as fast as humanly possible. So it's going to be a long one. So strap in and get ready. We'll just get right down to it. First up, we have Mazebook #1, written and drawn by Jeff Lemire. Now, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Jeff Lemire's work. He's been writing a lot lately, but I love it when he does his own work. And this is, it's written and drawn and colored by him. And it's very interesting because he talks about how that this particular story was very influenced by like David Lynch and uh movies and stuff, and it really makes sense because it's more of a somewhat of a stream of conscience in some ways, although it does have a really good story where it's a guy, he's an older gentleman, and he has these dreams about this girl, and you find out that it's actually his daughter, and apparently she's died, but he can remember her. He remembers her red sweater, but he doesn't remember her face. So like, it's just very, and then his day-to-day life is very mundane. It's, and yet, he has these dreams about his daughter and her wearing this red sweater, and there's like a thread of the sweater that like weaves throughout kind of the story, and it's very interesting because I love not only the story, but I love Jeff Lemire's artwork. Now I know it's not for everybody, but I do really love his artwork, and the thing I really love about this book is his use of color within his artwork. How when the guy is just doing his daily routine, it's very drab, and it's pretty much almost black and white, and yet when he has his dreams about his daughter and other things, it's these vibrant colors. So it's just, it really adds a lot to the overall like visual impact of the story, and it's absolutely an amazing book. And what's interesting is how it just, even though it seems very mundane, it's really gripping. It's just a really wonderful story, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. And it's one of my big top picks this week. I really love this book, and I really, really highly recommend it. Next up, we have Nine Stones #1. Written, drawn by Somel Spano. Well, this is interesting. So what it is this young kid, his dad owns this company, and you find out that he's like a delivery boy, but they deliver, not only do they deliver groceries, but within the groceries there's some drugs and stuff. So he's kind of a, I guess you could say mafia or whatever, some sort of angle like that. And so what it is the kid, this is like his second day, and he goes out with this other, younger delivery boy to deliver, and they get ambushed by, like, I guess you could say, another mob. It's not really explained per se, but you kind of get it. And the other kid gets shot, and then the one kid, the new kid, takes him to his hideout where he draws art and stuff. I guess he's his dad doesn't want like that or something. It's kind of interesting. I mean, there's the Spano does a lot of, there's a lot of exposition in this first issue. He's kind of setting everything up, and that's fine. But ultimately, I think one of the bit of the flaws is it's not very well, there's kind of like these, it's not laid out well in the sense of, it kind of hits all these points, but there's kind of not a lot, like, you kind of don't really get to know the characters that well. That was kind of one of the things that I found a little on the frustrating side, in that it presents things, but there's really not really an emotional attachment that you kind of get into it. It's not bad. It didn't quite catch, I don't think. I think there's some good ideas there, and I think it's kind of interesting. I will say, the artwork is actually pretty quite nice, and it's a really nice looking book. Especially for a smaller independent company. But I think it's kind of got, there's some promise there. I think it was okay, but it didn't necessarily overwhelm me, and I think the thing was, there was just not enough story and the characterizations to latch onto for me. And I think that's where that one, kind of failed a little bit. Next up, we have Last Flight Out #1. written by Mark Guggenheim with artwork by Eduardo Fergato. Now, this is interesting because so what it is this this guy who's a scientist, he's figured out, or he's stumbled across the fact that the world is going to end. So he decides to create these basically giant spaceships, Noah's Arks, to get everybody off of planet Earth so they can go to another Earth. And so, but what it is his wife, she gets pregnant, she has a kid, and then, the kid's like maybe 2 or 3 year old. They're in the mom and the daughter are in a car accident. The mom dies, and then, the daughter survives. But he's so wrapped up in this work and everything that he just hires nannies and she's taken care of. So, cut to later, this is the last arc to take off, and he's, he finds out that his daughter's in Chicago. Now, we do not see her as an adult. So what he wants to do is he's got 24 hours to go get her because he wants to, save her from Earth. So that's the basic premise. So it's all great. He takes off with the army guys. They head to Chicago, and then the helicopter just, I don't know, crashes. Something happens. And, that's kind of the end of the first issue. So there's kind of a lot going on. I will give the Guggenheim sets up a really interesting story here, and there is a lot of promise. I think he does a good job of laying out the story, laying out the characters. You get to kind of know the characters and stuff. And, I think it shows some promise. I did enjoy it, And Fergato's artwork is actually really quite nice. He does a really nice job of, because there's a lot of just basically people standing around talking and stuff. So, he does a good job of that. There's some action scenes, especially with the helicopter going down. So it's a good looking book. I think it's interesting, and it really shows a lot of promise. So I'm intrigued to see where the second issue goes, to see what Guggenheim's setting up in the story there. Next up, we have Deadbox #1, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Benjamin Tesma. Now, once again, I'm a huge fan of Mark Russell. Love Mark Russell stuff. So what this is think of Redbox, those DVD rental things out in front of stores and stuff. And so what this is this really small town. Like, it's absolutely out in the middle of nowhere. They have no theater or anything like that. This girl works at a convenience store / gas station, not a 7-Eleven, just a very small mom and pop type operation. And her dad's really sick, so she's not going back to college so she can run the store. So what it is so she decides to borrow, or get one of the movies from the machine. And so basically what Russell has done here, it's the Twilight Zone story. So the story revolves around the movie that she watches. So she watches this movie about these aliens who want to meet Earth people, and except for it's going to take them 50 years to send somebody there. And so what it is it mirrors the story. I don't want to give too much away, but it kind of mirrors the story eventually in the ending as it comes along. So that's where it's kind of like a Twilight Zone story. So apparently each issue is, I'm assuming, going to be a separate story, but it's going to involve this, people getting movies, and somehow the machine knows the movie that ties into what's going on. So it's really kind of interesting in that respect. So, you don't really realize how it all comes together until like you get to the end of the story. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. And then you're like, okay, it's Twilight Zone. But if you're gonna rip something off, you rip off the best, and it doesn't get any better than the Twilight Zone. So bravo to Russell for going there, because I think it's just a great concept to do those type of stories. And then you have Tesma's artwork, which is actually really, really pretty nice here. And it does a nice job. It gets the job done. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm very excited to see how each issue is going to have, like, I'm assuming like a different story, about somebody in this small town that gets one of these movies. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I really think it's worth checking out. So you should definitely look for that one. Next up, we have Ka-Zar, Lord of the Savage Land, #1, written by Zack Thompson with artwork by German Garcia. So I haven't read, there's events that kind of lead up to this, but apparently Ka-Zar died, but then came back to life. I don't know. It's not really explained, but whatever, whatever. He's alive and he's back in the Savage Land. He has his wife, and then they have a kid, and then there's Abu, their saber-tooth cat. He's a big cat, but it's like their cat. And so really, so what it is apparently he has these kind of new powers. He's not just, kind of like Tarzan type character, which he's basically been in the Marvel, universe in the past in comics. And so, it was kind of interesting. I mean, it was still Ka-Zar, but it was kind of like, there was kind of this new weird fangled stuff. His wife knows how to make him like this weird organic costume and stuff, and he can grow like plants, I don't know, like poison ivy or something. I don't know, that stuff was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I have no idea what's going on this. And that I will say, it was a bit of a problem, and Thompson didn't address a lot of that stuff in the sense of, he kind of explained stuff, but didn't really go into a lot of details. So you're just like, oh, look, he can grow stuff. Okay, sure. Because he was dead, I guess he has these powers. I guess we can just go with it. And that is a little bit of a problem, because honestly, most people have not read a Ka-Zar story in probably 800 years. I mean, it's been quite a while since he's had his own book. With that being said, it was a fairly enjoyable story. It didn't like blow me away or anything. And, it had some, it had moments and everything. I will say, Garcia's artwork's actually really nice. That was really the big win for this book. It's a really good looking book, and I really, really enjoyed the artwork. But I think the story just kind of was, it was muddled, because there's all this, kind of stuff that goes with this, kind of quote unquote new version of Ka-Zar that's not particularly explained as well as it should have been. And, it was just, and then once you kind of get past that, it was, it was a basic first issue. There was, kind of setup and everything, but it wasn't anything that was particularly overwhelming, So it was okay. It didn't really blow a lot of air up my skirt, but it was okay. Next up, we have Black Manta #1, written by Chuck Brown, with artwork by Valentine de Landro. Now, last week there was the Aquaman 80th anniversary, which had a kind of setup story to this. Now, I don't think you necessarily had to have read that to get into this first issue. The only thing, there was a story about an egg that he collects, and that was the short story in the Aquaman. But and he talks about having to get the egg in this issue, but I don't think you're really missing much. So what it is, it's I don't want to say that they're necessarily turning Black Manta into a hero or anything, but he's kind of, he's not really a villain per se in this particular setup. I would say he's more of a gray area character, because he's more of like a bounty hunter / pirate sort of thing. Like he does jobs to make money. That's kind of how he does it. Obviously he's not a big fan of Aquaman, but that's a whole different story. But so what this does is this kind of sets up that story, that there's he's stumbled on to some secrets and stuff. That kind of have to do with the egg, and once again that is in here. And then at the end there's some some character that escapes from like this mystic prison or something. So there's kind of a lot going on. I don't know that Brown landed it perfectly in this first issue. I think it was a decent first issue, but I think I think one of the things is there's kind of too many spinning plates going a little bit, where it's not that it's confusing, but you're kind of like, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on, and then yet obviously we're gonna have to read the second issue. So it just, I think it was a little on a bit overwhelming side, but okay, pretty decent. D. Landro's artwork is actually really nice. I really enjoyed it. Gave it a really nice look. Kind of had a nice gritty feel to it, which it just had a really nice look. I really enjoyed the artwork. So once again, it was kind of okay. It was just I think it shows promise. I'll definitely check out a second issue to kind of see where Brown takes it, because I think there are some good story elements there. We just have to kind of see where it goes. Next up, we have Bountiful Garden #1, written by Ivy Noel Weir, with artwork by Kelly Williams. So basically, you've read this a million times. Think of Alien, except for we haven't seen the alien yet. So there's this ship, It's on a mission to discover like a new planet, probably a new Earth, because that's we screwed up this one, so we got to go look for a new one. That's pretty easy mo to do. But so all of a sudden the ship stops for an unknown reason. They are near this unknown, uncharted planet. And and it's a bunch of kids because apparently the trip was going to take so long. They had kids, So think of like Lost in Space, but without the parents, and there's no robot. So they wake up and they're all like, oh, what are we doing? And then it's like, oh well, we should go to this planet and figure it out. And then of course the planet's kind of like, oh look, there's something there in the distance, and that's how the book ends. And it's like, okay, well, I've seen this and this, I've read this and honestly, Weir's story is nothing. There's just nothing new here. And it's not that it's not that it's a bad idea, but if you're going to do something like this, you got to really step up to the plate and like make something that at least feels different. And this doesn't feel different at all. And then the other thing that kind of puts a nail in the coffin in this one is Williams' artwork. It's not bad, but it's just kind of it's just kind of really it's just not there. It's like a little undercooked. That's the kind of the best way I can say. I think I think it's got promise there, but unfortunately it just kind of has, I hate to really say it, but it has a bit of an amateur quality to it, and it's just not good enough. So you have a story that's basic and not good enough, and then you have art that's just not good enough. So yeah, this is a skip it this week. So you see that one, just skip it. Next up, we have Blue and Gold #2, written by Dan Jurgens and with artwork by Ryan Sook. So Booster and Beetle are back. Now Beetle, this is Ted Kord's son. And so he has apparently burnt through all the money of Kord Industry. He gets fired, and then they have no money, and he has no Beetle ship anymore, but he has a Beetle Doom buggy. And then of course Booster, being the PR genius that he is that they're going to open up a superhero store where they're going to help people, I guess, getting cats out of trees or putting fire out, I don't know, for free. And Kord's like, wait, we have no money. This is bad. He's trying to call him. So, it's just kind of like, it's goofy. I mean, you have Dan Jurgens who created Booster Gold. And, this is a lot of fun. I wouldn't say that this book is, mind-numbingly brilliant, but it's fun, and it doesn't take itself entirely seriously, which is part of the charm of it. It just does what it does. And then you have Ryan Sook's artwork, which is really nice. He does a really nice job. It's just a fun little book. I mean, I wouldn't say, I would say this is a book that kind of depends on your budget. Like if you have a little bit of extra money, it's a fun ride. I enjoyed it, but it's not one of those, I don't think it's definitely a must buy, especially if you're in a bit of a tight budget. And like this week, there's 23 books. So yes, it would be a very tight budget for a lot of people, but I enjoyed it. I enjoy it for what it is. Next up, we have the Unbelievable Unteens #2, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by Tyler Crook. Now, once again, I'll say it again, Jeff Lemire, Black Hammer, it's always a win. I love Black Hammer. So what this is, so there was this comic artist who discovered that she's actually a character from, a comic book, and she discovers at the end of the first issue, like she remembers, like, that she's a hero. So she sets out to find the rest of the team. And so in doing so she finds the one guy, he works at a hospital, and she apparently they had a relationship, when they were superheroes, and she gives him a kiss, and he, his memories flood back. And then they go to a hospital and they find out that one of the guys he already knows, that he just didn't say anything to anybody. But what's interesting about this issue is it actually goes, Tyler Crook, I really have to hand it to him. He actually does two different styles. The book actually starts off with you're reading the comic from universe from where so his artwork is completely different from his regular artwork, but it actually works because then okay, I'm reading a comic book, and of course you can see the outlines of the tattered pages and stuff like that. But it's kind of genius. So by Lemire doing this, you're actually giving backstory to these characters, because we don't know. They know, they know that they are superheroes. Some of them do, but we don't. So we get to learn what they were like before, they kind of came to like the real world, or this world where they don't remember. And so it's really an interesting juxtaposition how Lemire kind of handles that. And then once again, you have Tyler Crook, when you're doing the comic book, it's kind of like in the past or whatever. And then, he does his regular style in the, like current. And it really just gives the book. I mean, at first you're kind of like, okay, well, and then you're, oh, okay, this makes total sense. And it really comes together. I'm really enjoying the story. And one thing I always like about these side stories in the Black Hammer universe is you don't have to read Black Hammer. You can totally read this on its own. It's perfectly fine. And I really like that. I think it's a really big plus. Next up, we have Not All Robots, number 2, written by Mark Russell, with artwork by Mike Deodato Jr. So the first issue, so we have, there's not a lot of humans left. Robots kind of rule the roost because, it's like they're doing all the jobs that humans don't want to do. And so at the end of the first issue, a bit of a spoiler alert if you haven't read it. So spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear, skip ahead. So they basically kill everybody that's in Florida, i.e. Disney World, and they suffocate them. So now there's the great tension of, the robots are pretty much sentient, and have feelings and everything. And so you had the dichotomy of the humans, and the robots, some people loved them, some people hate them. So now it's even fractured even more to where, there's basically going to be it looks to be like a civil war between the robots and the humans. And also the robots are actually going to be, they're manufacturing these new robots that look very human. So we haven't even saw how that's going to get like thrown into the mix of this whole thing. So once again, Russell really brings, the social commentary and political satire even into this book. And the first issue was amazing, and the second issue really just hits the ground running and just really does a wonderful job of just continuing story and even just ramping up that story quite well. And then you have Deodato Jr.'s artwork, which is really, really nice. He really was a great choice for this book. And, I like the fact that this is a bit out of his wheelhouse visual-wise. And I think that has been a real plus for this book, that he's really able to capture, especially a lot of the robot emotions in just, they have no facial expression. So, he really brings it. And I really like this book. I love this book a lot, and it's really, really good. And it's another pick this week. This is definitely well worth checking out. Next up, we have Defenders number 2, written by Al Ewing, with artwork by Javier Rodriguez. Now, the first issue was quite interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was Doctor Strange kind of getting this team together. I don't want to say that the second issue was bad, but the problem with the second issue, it got really kind of weird and jumbled in some respects. I mean, I get that they were going on a mission, but it kind of, it got a little jumbled. Like there was almost too much going on. There is a lot going on, but it's like it's overwhelming. Like you're not quite sure. Like the story's fairly, it's got the thread going through and everything. Like they're trying to defeat this Uber Galactus kind of thing. And so you have that. And then you also have the fact that they kind of go back in time and they, okay, it's the Hitler thing. If you could go back and kill Hitler as a baby, would you? So this is, if you could go back and kill Galactus as a baby, would you, how would that change everything? Well, that's what happens, or that's what kind of happens in this issue with like Silver Surfer. He actually meets Galactus as a baby. So obviously he can't, I don't want to say anymore, but there's kind of a lot of other stuff going on. So it's kind of one of those ones where it's not that the script is bad. It's just like you really have to kind of pull back a little bit and let really take a lot of the story in, because because there's so much going on, it can really be overwhelming. So I think that's one thing. And then you have Rodriguez's artwork, which is absolutely gorgeous. This is a really good looking book, but there's a lot of times where he does, like the layouts are really weird and everything, and it fits the story, but it's kind of, once again, it kind of goes back to there's a lot there, but it's kind of overwhelming. So you have to kind of like, once again, you have to like take a step back. But I do like it, and I'm intrigued to see, where they're going to take the story from here, because this issue really opens up a lot of, like, okay, what are they going to do now? Because you've really, you've really opened it up. But like I said, I still think it's worth checking out. It's definitely something different from Marvel, which I'm really surprised by. So that's a good one. Next up, we have Deadpool, Black, White, and Blood #2. So we have 3 stories in this issue. We have the first one's by David and Maria Lapham writing, and then Pete Woods doing the artwork. Then you have Carla Pacheco writing, and Leonard Kirk doing the artwork. And then you have the final story written and drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson, one of my favorites. So the first issue kind of interesting, or the first story's interesting. It's where somebody there's this villain who basically he's mind controlling Deadpool. Deadpool has to do whatever he does. It was kind of an interesting story. I did like the artwork. The artwork by Pete Woods was really good. I think the story was okay. It didn't really blow me away, but I thought it was kind of interesting. The second one was actually quite humorous because it's Deadpool, and he basically think of like him going to Vietnam, but instead of Vietnam, it's like monsters and stuff, vampires and stuff like that. And he basically has to like get out of there, and he ends up working with another one of the X-Men characters, Gambit, and it's a fun story. It's really interesting. I did enjoy the artwork. Once again, all the artwork on this one was really good. Leonard Kirk does a really nice job with it. But for me, the big win was the Daniel Warren Johnson story, where it's actually interesting because it's Daniel Warren Johnson actually writing a Deadpool story, while Deadpool is kind of like, oh, well, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. So it's kind of, it kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit. I mean, he doesn't directly, it doesn't directly talk to you, but it is kind of interesting in that fact. And it was, like I said, it's a fun issue. And once again, these are like, the Superman, Wonder Woman, they did a Wolverine, where, these are individual issues, and they're just individual short stories, so you can pick it up. And like I said, I for me, it was well worth it for the Daniel Warren Johnson. I think overall they were all enjoyable, but for me, the Daniel Warren Johnson was the big standout this issue. Next up, we have Search for Hugh, #1, written by John Suey and Steve Orlando, with artwork by Rubine, I can't tell. So what this is it starts off, you have this guy, he's in Afghanistan, and there's this both him and this female soldier, they set it up that they know each other. Then he goes back, he goes back home. He his parents own like this little restaurant, little like Chinese type restaurant. And then they get gunned down in front of the restaurant. And then he finds out from his mom, oh, well, we fled China because we're part of this like ancient gang, and they're coming out, the other side's like coming after us now. And he's like, what? He has no idea. So he calls up his friend from the army and says, hey, my mom and dad got shot, in the hospital, and I need to go after this gang. And she's like, do you know who this gang is? Because they're pretty badass. And so that's the basic premise of this story. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was blown away by the story, but I did enjoy it. And I think, it had some interesting concepts that Suey and Orlando introduced in the story. I think it's got a lot of promise. I did enjoy Rubine's artwork. I thought it was actually nice. There were a few times where it was like maybe a little stiff. I wouldn't say it was bad or anything, but overall, I think it had a nice look, and it was interesting. I think it was kind of worth checking out. I think it's got some promise. It definitely had enough there for me to like give the second issue of a whirl. So next up, we have Mamo #3, written and drawn by Saz Millage. Now, I am a really huge fan of this book, and the basic premise is that the witch who was in this town, when they die, they need to bury, their bones need to be buried in a certain place to kind of somewhat protect the village. But if they're not, then, magic kind of runs rampant in the village. So that is what has happened. And her granddaughter and the girl from the town now have to go find the bones, and so they have to place them in a certain place. So that's kind of what they're doing. So what we find out in this issue, so they continue to find the bones and bury them in the right place, is that the girl from the town, she saved one of the crows, and the crows are kind of like she actually saved the head crow. So she finds out that, or they both find out that the grandmother was, not that she was told, but they were the ones that spread the bones in the wrong places. Not that they did anything wrong, but ultimately that opens up what happened. Why did this happen? What happened to the grandmother? We still don't quite know that. So it's really interesting. And like I said, I love this book. The story is really intriguing, and the art is just absolutely stunning. This is a really good looking book. This is one of those. It's really an amazing book, and it really kind of reminds me of Studio Ghibli type story, in the sense of it's just got great characterization, and it's really good looking, and especially like Kiki's Delivery Service. And this is a wonderful book. I'm really enjoying this, and each issue just keeps getting better and better. And I really recommend this book, especially as a great all ages book. It's really, really wonderful, and I really think it's well worth checking out. Next up, we have Suicide Squad Get Joker #2, written by Brian Azzarello, with artwork by Alex Malvive. So what it is, Amanda Waller has been killed. She has the box to blow them up, but not anymore. Joker has the box to blow them up. So that's where we kind of left the last issue, where they were going to have to hunt down Joker. So now this issue, they basically form a plan to go find Joker and, try to get the box back from him. And now, so that's what they do. So they basically kind of go to this nightclub, or they're invited by the Joker to go to the nightclub. And so they go there, and their plan is to get the box back. So, that is basically this issue. And I don't want to give much away, but shall we say, there's another team that you will see, and it's not a superhero team, that really, at the end of this issue, gives it a great twist, and you're just like, oh crap, where are they taking this? Azzarello really, he brings a great sensibility to this story, and I like the fact that, I mentioned this in the first issue, I like the fact that it's not the regular team, that it's it's not, your typical Suicide Squad team. And I like that. I like that it's got different characters and stuff. And, and plus you have the Joker, which I think that probably the best thing about this is the Joker's not quite entirely played like the Joker. Actually, he's not really in it that much, but I like that fact that, Azzarello doesn't overuse him or overdo it. And that's a smart move. And that's what really is making this story quite good. And then you have Malvive's artwork, which is just really gorgeous. Really, really gorgeous. It's a great looking book, has a nice gritty, kind of feel to it. And he's really the perfect artist for this. So I really, really, this is well worth checking out. I really, really enjoy this book. Next up, we have Suicide Squad #7, written by Robbie Thompson, with pencils by Edward Pancia, and inks by Julio Ferreira. Now, I haven't been keeping up with Suicide Squad, but, as you can see by the cover, it's got Ambush Bug. I am a huge Ambush Bug fan. That goes back to the 80s. It was created by Keith Giffen and Robert Loren Fleming. And he's kind of... he's basically the best way to kind of describe him. He's kind of like Deadpool, but he breaks the fourth wall all the time. He constantly, and within the first 2 pages, he's breaking the wall, telling the whole entire squad, hey, guess what? You're in a comic book. So, there is that. And I have to admit, Thompson actually does get a good handle on who Ambush Bug. So if you don't know who Ambush Bug is, this is actually a pretty decent introduction to the gist of this character. So this basic story is that she's sending them to hell, and the reason that she's has him on the team is because he can teleport. And so she can send him to hell, but once they get there, they need to use him to like teleport, and he can only teleport in line of sight. So that's the basic premise here. And of course, when they get to hell, they encounter maybe some old Suicide Squad members that are no longer with us. So there's the Suicide Squad from hell in there. So that's what this issue is. Once again, Thompson does a nice job. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I picked it up for Ambush Bug, so I'll at least read it through this story arc that he starts in. We'll kind of see from there. Pasca and Ferrer do a nice job on the artwork. They capture the visual, puns and looks of Ambush Bug. There's one scene where he's dressed up like Harley Quinn. It's pure Ambush Bug. So maybe I'm hoping that maybe they'll like reprint. It'd be nice to get a nice big reprint of all the Ambush Bug stories from back in the day. But otherwise, I think this is a good introduction. It was a fun story, and I if you're a fan of Ambush Bug, I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have The Nice House on the Lake, number 4. Written by James Tynan IV, with artwork by Alvarado Martinez Bueno. I don't know what more I can say about this book. This book is absolutely amazing. So we have learned that these people are basically in this bubble. The rest of the world is gone to hell in handbasket. I think everybody's dead at this point, as far as we know. And what's interesting is, so they, we learned that they kind of had this unlimited pantry, but now the pantry's running dry, but then they get a note, they get a pad of paper, and whatever they want, whether it's food or, shampoo or whatever, they write down what they want on a list, and it appears the next day. So there's that. But now some people ask for certain things and nothing gets delivered. So it's kind of a question of what's going on? Where is this stuff coming from? Is it like alien? I mean, they don't even know if they're on Earth anymore at this point. But we do learn that apparently, they're still being watched, and but they don't know why they're still here. But what's interesting is, so there's a thing. We also learn that it's very possible they may not be able to die. So there's that has been introduced in here, but. Once again, Tynan, just like the story is just so rich, and it's a lot of it's just characters and emotions of like having some people have accepted living in the house, some haven't, and there's just all this it's very very psychological and everything, and it's just really it's a real page turner, and I really love that. And then you have Bueno's artwork, which is just it's amazing. It's really, really gorgeous. It's just a great looking book. We're only in the 4th issue, and I can't wait to see where this thing goes. And it's well worth picking up. It's a really another big recommendation this week. Next up, we have Conan 25, which Marvel is saying that it's actually 300, the legacy number. Now, whether that number is exact or not, I don't know. But either way, it's kind of it's an anniversary issue. Now, it's not a super big oversized issue, but it does have 4 short stories. The first one's by Jim Zub with writing, with Corey Smith doing the penciling, and Robert Pogge is the inker. Then we have Lara Hama writing with Paul Davidson is the artist. Then we have Dan Slott writing with Marcos Martin doing the artwork. And then the final story is by Priest, FKA Jim Alsley, writing, and Robert D. Latour doing the artwork. Now, I did, they're all nice little stories and everything. The first one is kind of like they go to this like temple, and he sees like 2 versions of himself that he has to fight and everything. I think it's an interesting story. Is that it's I think Zub wrote a nice story on that one, and it's fun for what it is. The next one, the Larry Hama Davidson story, is just Conan just like meeting some guys. Oh, I thought we killed all your people, blah blah blah, and then it's him and them fighting, and that's all. Really the best one, and I have to admit I'm surprised because I'm usually not the biggest Dan Slott fan, but boy, he nails it. It's actually a silent story with no dialogue, where Conan's drunk and the townspeople convince him to like go to this temple to like get this egg. That pretty much everybody that goes with him, they die, or he accidentally, like lops their head off because he's drunk. And then it's hilarious. It's absolutely just like this amazingly, charmingly funny story. It was really, really good. It was really good. And then the final one by Owsley and De La Torre. It's nice, it's Conan having a dream about, like him being old and like way old Conan, and it's fine. They're all nice little stories. I think the Dan Slott one just really nailed it, and the artwork on that one was just absolutely stunning. Let's see, Marcos Martin did that. It's by far, like, I don't know that it's worth $5, but it's pretty damn close. That story was just brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. But if you're a Conan fan, you want to kind of check out what Marvel's doing. I think this is kind of like, it's like a sampler. That's the best way to put it. It was fun. Next up, we have 6 Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton, number 4, written by Kyle Starks with artwork by Chris Schweitzer. Now, once again, so Trigger Keaton, asshole stuntman, and his sidekicks from his television shows are trying to find out. They believe he was murdered, and so they're still on the trail of finding out. So we actually get to introduce a new sidekick, this guy who apparently Trigger slept with his wife. So so they're like, well, maybe we think it's him because not only did he say he was going to kill Trigger, but apparently his wife died, and so maybe he killed her too. So they have to break into the studio. Like, one of my favorite things in this issue was that they go to the studio and they're just, we're like known celebrities, we'll be able to get on. And the guards like got a clipboard with their pictures, said, "Do not let in." And so they have to sneak in. And so they end up talking to the guy, and he's like, "Look, I would have loved to have killed him, but I didn't. My marriage was on the rocks before, he slept with her, and so, it's just, this book just keeps getting wilder and wilder, and yet, like, it's like, these are almost like individual stories, but I just love this book. It's like funny. I mean, I actually laughed out loud a couple times, and that's pretty hard to do with a comic. And Stark's just he's just having a wild time with this whole fiesta. This is a wild book. And then I really love Schweitzer's artwork. It really just has like a great style, and it really fits a story like a glove. I love this book, and I'm really enjoying it. Each issue just seems to be getting better and better. And I cannot wait to find out who killed this jerk in the end. Maybe he did commit suicide, but if he got killed, I really want to know who it was. Next up, we have Conjuring the Lover, written by David L. Johnson McGoldrick and Rex Ogle, and then artwork by Gary Brown for the main story. And then the second story is written by Ray Fox with artwork by Christopher Mitten. And then we have Dave Johnson doing the fake advertising. So I think this issue we finally kind of get to see where the girl, she gets kicked out of college because, basically these demons are following her. She's not possessed, but they're basically like the last issue, she shoved like this guy that liked her in front of a bus. Now, fortunately, he didn't get killed. That's the main reason that she gets kicked out of school. But then you find out that she comes back and she meets one of her friends, and you find out that this girl, they're actually in love. So that kind of brings an interesting dichotomy to what's this demon doing and why is it doing it to her? So we're kind of right on the cusp of this, because the next issue will be the last part of the story. So it'll be interesting to see. The backup story by Fox and Mitten, it was kind of interesting. I think it was about this woman. Her baby had mysteriously died, but she believes that it was actually her husband that killed it. And there's it's because of a possessed music box. It was kind of an okay story. It was fine for what it was. It didn't really blow me out of the water or anything, but it was enjoyable for what it was. And then Minton's artwork is actually really quite nice. Once again, I really have to mention Dave Johnson's ads are just freaking hilarious. I mean, there's only 2 pages, but they're so worth it every issue. It's fun. I think it's it's enjoyable for what it is, and I'm still enjoying it. There's only 1 more issue, so we'll see how it all wraps up in the end. Next up, we have the Me You Love in the Dark. Number 2, written by Scotty Young with artwork by George Corona. Now, I really enjoyed this. So what it is this artist, she rents this, like, basically this big house. It's haunted. Not apparently, it's haunted. So at the end of the first issue, there's this, kind of a ghost that says, hey, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, ah. So she starts talking. Now we don't see the ghost; it's kind of in the shadows. So that's kind of where the title comes from. So we don't know whether it's what it is. Whether it's a person or whatever. Die in the house. We're not sure, but basically she starts to the whole reason she moved there is to become more inspired because she was having artist block. So she actually kind of starts. So she has a conversation with the house or the mystery being. And, so she, at first she's freaked out and everything, but then she's kind of like, oh, well, maybe this is not so bad. So she does kind of get her, creative juices flowing, and she does apparently what she feels is kind of like a portrait of this apparition or whatever. And so that's where we kind of leave this next issue to kind of see, okay, what's going on here? So that'll be interesting to see. The story's actually nice. It's kind of a haunted house type story. It's pretty basic, but I like it. The real big win here is Corona's artwork. It's just, this is an absolutely gorgeous book. It's the same team who did Middle West, which was a wonderful book, and they really bring it. So I'm really enjoying this. So I think it's still worth checking out. Next up, we have Swamp Thing number 7, written by Ram V with artwork by Mike Perkins. Now, this is the second part of the Suicide Squad crossover, and once again, it's just Suicide Squad in Swamp Thing. You have to read Suicide Squad, and so they're basically Amanda Waller wants Swamp Thing because like he can be like a spy anywhere in the world because of the green. So that's why she's trying to get him. So he's already taken out a couple of the team, and so this issue, they're kind of closing in on him, and it doesn't look good. And then we also kind of start to learn a bit more of his backstory about his relationship with his father and his friend, and how he kind of ultimately it became the Swamp Thing. So that's really what this. So there's kind of the 2 stories going on. I have to admit, Ram V's really handling this quite well, and I actually like, this is one of the few times where I think a crossover it actually works really well, because one, it's contained in this book. You don't have to read Suicide Squad, but I like how he's using the squad to move his story along, and I like that. I think it's really great. Once again, I love Mike Perkins' artwork. He really just brings it to town on this one. It's another great looking book, and there's a great kind of cliffhanger, because the Suicide Squad will be back next issue. So it'll be, once you see that last panel, you're gonna be like, oh crap, let's see where this goes. So once again, still well worth checking out. I love this book. I'm really enjoying it, and you should be buying it. And finally, we're at the last one. Finally, Batman Catwoman what are we up to? Number 7. Written by Tom King with artwork by Liam Sharp this issue. So giving Clayman a bit of a break for this issue. But I will say I like, so this story, so we know, and we're in the 8th issue. So if you don't know this, Catwoman has killed the Joker, but in the future. So the story always bounces around from quote unquote future, present day to previous. So that's kind of where, and now this issue really deals a lot with Selina's relationship with Bruce, and how that is all fitting in, how all those pieces of the puzzle are fitting into that. So it's really interesting. And so we have Dick, who is now Commissioner Dick Grayson, and he basically arrests Catwoman. Well, it's obvious that, Catwoman wants to be arrested, but we don't know why. So that's kind of where, that's what's going on in this issue. And once again, King is just really knocking out of the park. I love this book. I love how he's doing the kind of multiple stories, the past and the present. And, having Liam Sharp, I love Liam Sharp's artwork. The man is just a freaking genius artist. And he really does a nice job here because, once again, you have these two stories and his artwork style's a little bit different, for like the present, future and then the past. So it's, once again, it's very visual, because Clayman does the same thing. And it's really, once again, it really adds a lot to the story and gives it a great visual appeal. And, as far as I'm concerned, anytime Liam Sharp wants to do anything, I'm all over it. So that's going to do it for this show. I know it's been a long one, but 23 books later, we have come to the end. Yes, we are at the end, folks. It's been a big week, so I hope everybody is out there, enjoying all the wonderful comics that are coming out. Public service announcement, as always, I get my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach, California. Ryan, Annie, and Eduardo, they're great. Ryan runs a really great store there. And they have a sister store in Culver City. They're separate, but same name. Chris and her team, they once again run a great store. So if you live in the LA area, I highly recommend both stores. And once again, we're going to, be safe out there. Please get vaccinated. It's very important. We're still seeing some rough numbers out there. Please wear your mask when possible to help stop the spread so we can get this pandemic stamped out. And as always, we end our show with be kind. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. Being kind doesn't cost anything, and it really goes a long way. So just take care of yourselves and be kind to each other, and we'll do it again next week. So this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com signing out. Take care, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.